Today I am finally doing my much requested album ranking of Immolation. I'll bet no one watches it. Before I get into this video, I just want to say that I've set up a Spotify account, That Metal Bloke, and I'm putting together playlists for all of my album rankings, so that way if you're new to the band, you've got something you can go and check out, you know, sort of my favourite picks from each album. So could be something for you to get into, so make sure you check that out, link in the description. So here we go, Immolation. Now, I'll say right from the very beginning, genuinely this band does not have a bad album. None of them. They are incredibly consistent. I have enjoyed preparing for this immensely. Just going through these albums, oh my god, it's been so much fun. There's not a bad album amongst them, so take this with a pinch of salt, but I am listing them in my preference. That's all it is. Let's do a bit of band history before we go into it. How about that, hey? So Immolation is an American death metal band from Yonkers, New York, and they're considered one of the leaders of the New York death metal scene, along with Incantation, Mortician and Suffocation. I'll definitely be doing rankings of Incantation and Suffocation at some point. Mortician I'm a little less familiar with, so I'll have to try and get into some of their stuff. The band was formed in May of 1986 after the demise of a band called Rigor Mortis. Now, this is not the same Rigor Mortis from Texas. They had the same name. I'm not sure if that had anything to do with them splitting up. But anyway, the band consisted of Andrew Sakowitz, who was on bass guitar and vocals, Dave Wilkinson on drums, Robert Vigner on guitar. And Robert Vigner in guitar. There was no... After recording the Decomposed and Warriors of Doom demos, Sakowitz left the band in early 1988 and was replaced by Ross Dolan, and the band's name was changed to Immolation. Now, it's worth pointing out, Ross Dolan and guitarist Robert Vigner have been with the band ever since. They've been the consistency throughout this band. I know Rob is a huge part of the writing, and there are the drummers and the second guitarist change throughout, but those two remain throughout the entirety. As far as their musical style goes, they use a lot of dissonant harmonic patterns, dual guitar harmonies and complex rhythm patterns, along with tremolo picking, not to mention a very distinctive use of pinch harmonics. There is no doubt to me that this band was a huge influence on Gojira. I've not been able to find that anywhere. In fairness, I literally googled "Are Immolation an influence on Gojira?" and it wasn't in the top 3 results, so I kind of left it at that, but whatever. But there is absolutely no denying Gojira took a lot from Immolation. There are so many moments through their discography. I was just thinking that this is a Gojira riff. Who took it from Immolation? Not the other way around, by the way. I'm not slagging off Gojira either. I like Gojira. They totally made it their own. I'm just saying, this has got way out of hand. Now, let's get into the album ranking itself. First album we have is Dawn of Possession. This was released on July the 19th, 1991 via RC Records, who I believe were associated with Road Racer Records, who obviously became Roadrunner Records, but there we go, Jesus. And the lineup for this would, of course, feature Ross Dolan on vocals and bass, along with Robert Vigner on guitar, and they're joined by Tom Wilkinson on guitar and Craig Smolowski on drums. Okay, straight up, I love this album. I adore this album. Straight out the gate, I mean, there are definite nods to Morbid Angel on this album, bearing in mind that this was in 1991. Death metal had only been around for a little while, so, you know, there's bound to be comparisons to other bands at the time. But straight away, it seems to me that they had their own style. Oh my god. I had a tuna mayo sandwich and a Diet Coke before doing this. You might be interested in. You might be hearing a lot of that as we go. But it seems to me they very much had their own style going right from the very beginning. I remember listening to this album for the first time. I mean, I've only been into this sort of music for the last 4 or 5 years. So it's probably about 4 years ago, I think, with this band. And I remember not being particularly taken with it. Initially, when I first heard it, I thought maybe this is one of those bands that is just not going to be for me. But we'll get there. I thought that the first track, Into Everlasting Fire, was great. It was packed full of awesome riffs. But I found the rest of the tracks just kind of blurred into one another until we get to the final 3 tracks, starting with After My Prayers. This is a particular favourite of mine. This one features those pinch harmonic squeals that are very reminiscent of Gojira. If you haven't heard the band, check this track out, okay? After My Prayers. You'll know what I mean when you start hearing some of those riffs come in. Very, very much influence Gojira. I'm telling you. Fallen Disease is fast as fuck and still packs in some nice groovy riffs, as does the closer, Immolation itself, which explodes at around the halfway point. Those Left Behind is another standout track, but so are pretty much all of the songs in this one. I love this album. It just has a feel all of its own. It kind of feels separate from the rest of the discography in many ways. But yeah, it's just a great album, a fantastic debut. I enjoy this one a lot, and for me, this one goes in A tier. Got there eventually. Don't move that. So now we move on to 1996, more specifically February 13th, 1996, where they released their second album, Here in After. And this was released on Roadrunner Records. We have the same lineup as last time, so let's get straight into the songs. Nailed to Gold sets things off nicely, had some really pummeling riffs. The opening riff on the title track itself immediately brings to mind Morbid Angel, but they totally put their own spin on it. It's just, oh my god, check this track out as well. Yeah, what did I say it was? The title track, Here and After, the intro riff is just amazing. Check it out. Away from God, heavy as folk. Jesus, you could not save me, you could not save them, you could not save the world from misery. Some awesome jagged riffs in there as well. Towards Earth is another one with some great slower, groovier moments. Christ Cage is a great closer. The beginning of it really brings to mind Thin Lizzy's Angel of Death. It has this real ominous kind of build up to the song. Obviously the track after that is nothing like it, but really, really cool. This one I do enjoy a lot, but not quite as much as the first. That being said, the songs that I do like on this one, I think, are actually maybe better than Dawn of Possession. But this one is also going in A tier, but slightly behind the debut. Now we head to 1999 with Failures for Gods, and this one came out on Metal Blade Records. And this one sees the departure of Craig Skamolsky on drums, and instead he's replaced by ex-Falling Christ drummer Alex Hernandez. Now the first thing that stands out on this album is the production, which is notably worse than their other material. The drums in particular lack any real bite, which is a shame because Hernandez, I think, does a fantastic job. There's also very little in the way of bass here as well. So yeah, we'll get into that. Once Ordained is a great sludgy riff that kicks in at the halfway point. No Jesus, No Beast is a great track, gives a great blend of fast, slow and groovy, along with Ross bellowing, "Can you hear us? Death to Jesus," which is pretty fucking harsh. Failures for Gods, the title track itself, has a great close with this clean yet dirty tremolo sounding chord sequence that I really enjoyed it. It segues nicely into the closing riff. God Made Filth is great. The Devil I Know is a fantastic close to the album, very atmospheric outro. I enjoyed this album a lot, but this one falls to C tier for me. Once again, incredibly consistent. I could happily listen to any one of these albums. The production really does bring it down quite a bit. It does take the energy down just that little bit. That being said, there's no denying the quality of the songwriting, but when you're ranking a band like this and their consistency, you've got to, you kind of have to take a lot of things into consideration. So the production does take it down a lot, but not a bad album. Next up, on November the 7th, 2000, released on Metal Blade Records, Close to a World Below. Once again, we have the same lineup as the previous album. This album is considered by many to be one of their best, and with good reason. The songwriting on this is top tier. The production on it is fantastic as well. Everything stands out. It's clean enough for where you got all the definition, but still dirty enough where it's, to give it that heft that you're looking for. Higher Coward sings out with discordant chords before everything just erupts. The drums really pop this time around. Father, You're Not a Father is filthy sounding and oppressive as fuck. Furthest From the Truth is relentless right the way through. I love the outro on Fall From a Higher Place. Unpardonable Sin has another great discordant intro section. Lost Passion is another one that has a riff that clearly influenced Gojira. This one really reminded me of something that they would have done on From Mars to Sirius. So again, check out Lost Passion if you want to find out what I'm talking about. Put My Hand in the Fire is another one that goes straight for the throat, and the title track makes for an epic closer as this fantastic atmospheric black metal intro on there as well. It's just absolutely gorgeous. There's no way that this can be anything other than S tier. It's a bit predictable maybe, but it's just an amazing album from start to finish. There are no duds on it. It's just incredible. So yeah, this one goes in S tier. Simple as that. Now we move ahead to 2002, October 28th to be precise, and released on Listenable Records. We have Unholy Cult. Now we do have another lineup change here. Thomas Wilkinson left the band for what I'm not sure what the reasons were, but he was replaced by Bill Taylor. Now the production on this album is a lot rawer, but I think it suits them well, and it goes with the more black metal elements that are thrown into this album, or at least I thought there were black metal elements on this album. Really enjoy the title track, black metal, with some nice groovier elements thrown in as well. A Kingdom Divide is yet another song that had black metal influences, and I heard a lot more Gojira once again. Reluctant Messiah has a great bouncy riff on the chorus. Rival the Eminent is another banger, and I particularly enjoy the outro riff on this one. Speaking of cool outros, I also enjoyed the riff that fades us out of the final track, Bring Them Down, which really brung to mind Soundgarden, of all bands. I don't know why. There was something about it that reminded me of something from Super Unknown. I really enjoy this album, but this one falls a bit for me, and I'm going to put this in B tier. Again, fantastic. None of their albums are bad. I'm never going to get sick of saying that. I am going to get sick of saying it. I'm already sick of saying it. Next up, released on February 5th, 2005, once again on Listenable Records, we have Harnessing Ruin. And this time we have another lineup change. Alex Hernandez steps down from behind the kit. Again, not sure what the reasons were. And Steve Shalati is joining the band. All of the previous albums up to this point, the lyrical content dealt very much with anti-religious and especially anti-Christianity themes. But from this album onward, the subject matter starts including a lot more politics. Ross Stolan had this to say about the reason why. We did kind of leave the religious themes alone because we were very passionate about that for the first number of records. And once Unholy Cult came out, that was where we branched off. That's where the shift happened, because that was right after 9/11, as you know. I saw it, I went down there, I had family that got killed in the towers, and it was a life-changing event in a lot of ways. And I knew at that point that things would never be the same in our country or in the world. And that's where the shift happened. And we started to focus more on the darker side of humanity, which we did already with the religious themes, of course, because that was a very dark part of our history. I mean, not to knock anybody who's very passionate about their religion, but in my personal point of view, I've always thought it was a very controlling and negative force. It serves as a division in our world. It divides people, just like so many other things. So that's where we are, and that's where that shift started, away from religion and into something more socially relevant and looking more deeply at ourselves. So there you go, deep shit. This is another album that suffers from a pretty muddy production. The drums in particular sound very farty, despite new guy Steve Shalati doing a fantastic job behind the kit. But let's get into the songs. Opening track, Swarm of Terror, features some great signature pinch harmonic riffs to get things started nicely. Our Saviour Sleeps is another one packed full of great riffs. Tuna Mayo. I really dig the opening riff of the title track. Dead to Me is an interesting song that brought to mind Shedding Skin from Pantera, with these sort of whispered parts. I thought they were quite cool. Son of Iniquity also had some interesting stuff going on with the hushed vocals. I personally enjoyed some of the more experimental stuff that they were doing with this album. There's a great There's a great riff at the halfway point of My Own Enemy. Crown the Liar has some cool black metal chord progressions. I enjoy this album. Once again, the production does bring it down a bit, and you've got to go for what you've got. But this stop moving. This one for me is going to go in C tier. Once again, not a bad album. Not a bad album. Before anyone starts slagging me off. Alright. Moving on to May 8th of 2007. Again, on Listenable Records, we get Shadows in the Light. And we have the same lineup, which is always nice. Production is once again a bit muddy. The guitars lack any kind of bite, and they almost get lost among the drum and bass, which is a bit unfortunate, especially for this sorts of music, because the riffs are obviously a predominant part of it. Hate's Plague is a strong enough opener with a mix of fast tremolo picked lines and groovier sections. Passion Kill has a really cool lumbering intro riff. Shadows in the Light has a great breakdown section, if that's what you can call it. World of Agony is a great track. Tarnished has some great lead work in it. Whispering Death is a great closer. I enjoy a lot of the songs on this, but at the same time, nothing really leaps out as a whole. There were moments in each song, kind of the bits that I've just mentioned, that were great, but overall the songs didn't feel as strong as on some other albums. So that, put with the poor production, this one is going in D tier. Still a lot to enjoy though. A bad Immolation album is still a good album. Now we move on to March 9th, 2010, and this album comes out via Nuclear Blast Records, and the album is Majesty and Decay. Once again, same lineup, and I guess the band are really starting to groove with each other. The production is vastly improved on this. You can hear everything. This is a really great sounding album in my opinion. And this is a fucking great one, so let's go through this. The Purge is the first real track, and it's a banger that displays some decent dynamics, going from heavy as all hell to lighter, cleaner moments. There's also a great use of melody with the riffs that works incredibly well. A Token of Malice is packed full of blast beats, frenetic riffing, discordance and groove. Total banger of a song. The title track is another one that offers groove into the mix and very effectively. Divine Code offers up some much faster tempos. Inhuman Form is ridiculously good, with so many groove-laden riffs throughout. A Glorious Epoch sees drummer Steve Shatley delivers some incredible double bass work. A Thunderous Consequence is brutal as fuck and has some great leads. The Rapture of Ghosts peppers moments of groove and melody throughout. Power and Shame is relentless, and The Comfort of Cowards is a fitting closer to an incredible album. And this one has to join Close to a World Below in S tier. In fact, for me, this goes in front of it. I love this album. It is an absolute beast of an album. It sounds amazing. You can hear everything that's going on, but it's still raw and heavy as hell. It's an amazing album. Now we move on to May the 10th, 2013. Once again with Nuclear Blast Records, once again with the same lineup, and this album is called Kingdom of Conspiracy. This is the band's first concept album, essentially. It's based on conspiracy theories and is very inspired by George Orwell's 1984. And Ross had this to say. It's about real conspiracies. It's about people conspiring every day to do very bad things, evil things in the name of greed and self-preservation and power. It's easier to look the other way and not have to confront these things head on. I think that's what makes it a very dark album. If you follow the way things happened in Germany in the 30s, people were groomed very slowly back then. And when the chains were finally wrapped around the country, it was too late for a lot of these people to do anything. This is also reflected in the artwork by Pierre Olofsson, who shows figures shackled with their eyes and mouths sewn shut. The production sounds very modern on this album, very compressed, very triggered sounding drums. I think a lot of people had an issue with this. I personally think it's a little bit too clean for my tastes, but having said that, this is a heavy fucking album, and you know, it's okay, it works for it. This is a very heavy album and it does lack a lot in terms of dynamics, but it's still a fantastic batch of songs. The first track is the title track, Kingdom of Conspiracy. This one goes straight for the throat in terms of its intensity. Bound to Order has some great leads and I really enjoyed the outro section. Keep the Silence has a very creepy intro riff that was very satisfying. God Complex is a full-on rager. Echoes of Despair has an awesome breakdown riff. Indoctrinate has some great riffs ranging from tremolo picked lines to these almost Celtic Frost-esque single note, you know, those huge ringing out notes that Celtic Frost use. And there's another one with a great breakdown section with an awesome solo towards the back half of the song. Great Sleep is a mid-paced stomper. A Spectacle of Lies is another one full of amazing double bass work, as does Serving Divinity. It's a strong closer with black metal elements. I found tremolo pick parts and some groove thrown in there. There are a lot of people who don't enjoy this album that much, and I can't really understand why. I mean, you know, it does lack the dynamics of some of the other albums perhaps, but I think it's a damn good album. But having said that, I'm going to put it in C tier, but I'm going to put it at the top of C tier. I think there's some great stuff on here. I guess the production does work for it. It's just heavy as hell, so it does have that much more modern, you know, production sound to it. It's a good album. All of their albums are just so damn good. I'm not sure this list actually means anything, really, so why am I doing this? Now we move on to February 24th, 2017, once again with Nuclear Blast Records for Atonement. We do have another lineup change here with Bill Taylor leaving on guitars, and he is replaced by Alex Boakes. Alex Boakes or Books? The production feels a little warmer on this, but it's still heavy as fuck. And this album definitely offers a little more in terms of dynamics as opposed to the previous album. The Distorting Light is a great opener. When the Jackals Come has a lot of melody in with the heavy, and it works really well. Fostering the Divide has an oppressively heavy, slower tempo that adds to the dynamics of the album. Rise of the Heretics mixes breakneck speed with much slower tempos and some great lead playing. Thrown to the Fire starts at a glacial pace but goes full bore at the halfway mark. Did I say full bore? Full bore. Destructive Currents is packed full of pinch harmonic riffs that feel unsettling, but, you know, in a good way. Lower has a great outro section that's really atmospheric. Atonement is fucking great, and once again has a fantastic outro section. Above all, has a great galloping triplet riff. The Power of Gods sounds as epic as its name suggests. Epiphany has a sick intro riff that is full of lumbering menace that builds into faster tempos before fading out into the riff again. Brutal as fuck. I'm glad I write this stuff down. I wouldn't have remembered all that. This album has a real nice amount of their slower material on here, which I particularly enjoy. Now, originally I had this for A tier, but on reflection, I think that this also goes in S tier for me. An absolutely brutal album, packed full of dynamics, sounds amazing. It just delivers on all fronts. An astonishingly good album. I love it a lot, and it's not. I always love it when bands who have been doing it this long still have quality albums this late in their career. It's just so damn good. And that brings us up to February the 18th, 2022, once again released by Nuclear Blast Records. Once again, the same lineup for their, at the time of recording this, their last album, Acts of God. The production is fantastic on this album, sounds clean, but it works. And for some reason, Ross's voice just really stood out to me as particularly impressive on this album. I mean, his voice has always been consistently good, but for some reason it really stood out to me when I was listening to these songs. The first track is Abandon. That's just kind of like an intro sort of segue piece into the first real track, An Act of God. This one just pummels you right in the face. The Age of No Light has some great Celtic Frost inspired moments amongst the faster paced riffs. Noose of Thorns is savage as all heck. Shed the Light starts out mid-pace but explodes later on. Blooded has some fantastic leads. Overtures of the Wicked has a very morbid angel-sounding slower section amongst the blast beats. Immoral Stain has nasty tremolo picking along with some great double bass. Incineration Procession is a fucking banger. Broken Prey has some real groove. Derelict of Spirit has some real attitude. When Halos Burn is fast as fuck and slow as fuck. Let the Darkness In builds from mid-pace to a relentless blitz, and The Flames Wept is a oddly placed moment of respite as it comes in just before the album closer. I was a bit confused with this one, but Apostle is an absolute beast to close the album. This is another fantastic sounding album, and I'm going to put this in at the top of A tier. Now, I know a lot of people like to space these out and kind of make them a bit more, you know, only so many on each list, but it's my list. This is what I think. These are all fantastic albums anyway. Even Shadows in the Light, which I've got in D tier, is still an amazing album. So, you know, what more do you want from me? So, there you have it. That's my Immolation album ranking. It's been a long time coming. Hoping that you enjoy it. I'm hoping if you haven't checked out the band that you might check out the playlist and maybe there'll be some stuff that you like. The worst that can happen with these album rankings is that maybe you'll get turned on to music you've not bothered with before. And always, you know, having new music to listen to it's the goal, right? That's what we want. As far as my upcoming album rankings, I've got quite a few planned. So Devin Townsend has a new album coming out in a couple of weeks at the time of recording this, at least. So I'll be doing a album ranking for all of his stuff. That's going to take a long time to do on the build up to that album. I'm going to do a Typo Negative album ranking for Halloween. Next month we've got the new Opeth album, so I'll be doing an Opeth album ranking, and I've got a load planned. I want to do some stuff for more death metal bands in the future, like Morbid Angel, etc, etc. So anyway, we got a hell of a lot coming up still on the channel. Thanks again for watching as usual. If you have made it this far, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help to boost the channel in terms of the algorithm. And, you know, whatever that is or chooses to be on this particular day, it's always changing. Close the video. Then turn it off. fuck's sake.